West Asia is at a breaking point. Israel and U.S. have continued aerial bombardment campaigns in Iran as a massive wave of Iranian firepower hammers key targets. Tehran claims unleashing its most advanced missiles, breaching sophisticated air defenses, and striking deep into U.S. bases and Israeli territory. As explosions rock major cities and strategic hubs, the scale of this retaliation is sending shockwaves in Israel and America's establishment at some point. Take a listen.
The night sky over Israel erupts without warning. Sirens scream across cities. Civilians rush into shelters. And within moments, streaks of fire cut across the darkness. Interceptor missiles rise, incoming warheads descend. For a brief moment, the sky becomes a battlefield. Then the impacts begin. Iran has launched multiple missile salvos targeting Israeli territory, causing heavy damage in several areas. Buildings have been hit, streets are scattered with debris. Emergency teams race against time as explosions echo across the region.
We're at a hit site, and this site, thank God, in a miraculous way, and thanks to great civilian discipline, there is only a few wounded, all for anxiety and smoke inhalation wounded.
This is not a routine missile barrage. Iran says it deployed a combination of its more advanced missile systems in the attack. These include the Khaybar Shekan, the Imad, and the Qadr missiles. Each of these weapons is designed for precision and impact. The Khaybar Shekan is a solid-fuel ballistic missile built for quick launch, improved accuracy, capable of reaching hypersonic speed. The Imad missile is believed to feature enhanced guidance systems for striking targets with precision. The Qadr is a long-range missile capable of delivering heavy payloads deep into enemy territory. Military analysts say the use of multiple advanced systems in a single coordinated strike increases the chances of penetration through air defense layers. And that appears to be the strategy. Overwhelm the system, force interceptions, then let some missiles slip through. Tehran says that it will continue to retaliate against American and Israeli aggression.
Iran has always stood up tall, and we are going to do the same by defending heroically. This is a nationalist, defense for us, and we have no option just to push back and hit back aggressors and those who have started this war of aggression.
Tehran has also claimed strikes on U.S.-linked targets in the region, signaling a widening battlefield. These are images of Iranian missiles and drones targeting the U.S. embassy in Baghdad. For U.S. and Israel, the challenge is mounting. Each wave tests the limits of its missile defense network. Each impact raises the stakes further, and as the missiles keep coming, one reality is becoming harder to ignore. This war is no longer about isolated strikes. It is becoming a sustained missile campaign. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
My wife said, if you win, we'll fly to Asia. If I win, we'll fly to Paris. I bet you won't get toned with just Tai Chi walking before Christmas. Guess who won?
My dad can't lose weight with Tai Chi, so it's a scam?
Oh, no, he's probably just doing it wrong.
Most men do Tai Chi wrong, and that's exactly why they can't lose weight. How old is your father?
He is 56.
Oh, perfect. By the end of November, you won't even recognize him.
But what if he hasn't worked out in years?
That's even better. Tai Chi was built for men 40 plus.
Isn't the gym better after 40?
The gym breaks you. Tai Chi will make you feel better and lose weight faster than in your 20s.
Does he need any equipment?
No, his body is enough. Just do it for 9 minutes a day and see your body feel younger.
So what's the first step?
Click the link, get the app, and start tomorrow.
What happens if my husband starts Tai Chi tomorrow morning and follows it for 28 days?
You won't believe his results by the end of the month. This is how Tai Chi workouts work.
But what if he hasn't worked out in years?
He can start small, that's fine. This program is designed specifically for beginner men age 40 to 60 plus.
Isn't a gym better?
Gym doesn't work after 40. Do Tai Chi to live longer, healthier, and happier.
Any equipment required?
No, body is enough to build a strong physique and a clear mind.
How to start?
Just get the app and start tomorrow.
3 reasons to start Tai Chi workout this summer. In 1 week, you'll see your energy. In 2 weeks, you'll feel your breath. In 3 weeks, you'll have energy and your wife won't believe your results. Here is the personalized plan of short Tai Chi workouts tailored for beginners over 50. It takes just 7 minutes per day. Beginner friendly and requires no equipment. You can work out anytime, anywhere. Just open the app and follow along.
TV7 Israel News is made possible thanks to your generous donation. Shalom ve'erev tov, good evening. Welcome to our daily TV7 Israel News Bulletin, broadcast from Jerusalem. The Israeli Air Force successfully eliminates 2 of the Ayatollah regime's most senior leaders. The European Union's High Representative for Security and Foreign Policy, Kaja Kallas, says its member states do not want to place their people in harm's way in the Strait of Hormuz. And Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel maintains surprising elements for the Ayatollah regime moving forward. The tyrannical Ayatollah regime in Iran is desperately trying to hold to power, frantically attempting to display calm while taking unabashed jabs at U.S. President Donald Trump. Spokesman of the Ayatollah regime's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps claimed that Iran was engaged in a successful battle to prevent the United States and Israel from entering into the field, where, according to him, the outcome of the battle would ultimately be decided.
A message to the President of the United States. The outcome of war cannot be determined by tweets. The result of a war is determined in the field, the very place where you and your forces do not dare to approach, and you can only talk about it in your tweets. It's better to name this war as Epic Fear instead of Epic Fury.
The blatant remarks by the RGC spokesman were made merely several hours before Israeli Air Force aircraft launched dozens of strikes against regime targets throughout Iran, during the course of which the de facto leader of the Ayatollah regime, Secretary of the Supreme National Security Council, Ali Larijani, was successfully eliminated, alongside both the commander-in-chief and deputy commander of the repressive Basij forces.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and I had instructed the IDF to continue hunting down the leadership of the regime of terror and oppression in Iran and to repeatedly cut off the head of the octopus and prevent its growth. U.S. President Donald Trump spoke about the high turnover rate of Iran's leadership. When morning emerges in Washington, we will update him that the high turnover rate persists and even intensifies following the assassination of 2 of the most senior remaining leaders. I have now been updated by the Chief of Staff that Supreme National Security Council Secretary Larijani and the head of the Basij, which is the central repression body in Iran that was responsible for the massacre of the protesters, were assassinated tonight and joined the head of the destruction plan, Khamenei, and all the eliminated members of the axis of evil in the depths of hell.
Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz further highlighted that the terror regime, which proactively sought to eliminate Israel, is getting destroyed. Overnight, during a signing ceremony of an executive order in Washington, President Donald Trump highlighted the importance of the military campaign against the Ayatollah regime in Iran, which actively sought to attain nuclear weapon capabilities.
If you believe that Iran should not have a nuclear weapon, they should not have it, then you have to absolutely love what I've done, because in 2 weeks we have decimated them. They have no Navy, they have no Air Force, they have no anti-aircraft weapons, they have no leadership. The leadership is gone. But then they set up a new leadership to go and name a new leader, and that leadership is gone. And now they think maybe the sun is gone. They're all gone. My biggest problem is I have no idea who we're talking to, because nobody ever heard of any of these people. They're all dead. But we did a job for the world, not a job for us, for the whole world. We took the worst country in 50 years and maybe longer from the ideological standpoint, a country that wanted to blow up the world, a country that is sick.
Earlier, during a lunch event with Kennedy Center board members, President Trump also addressed Israel's decision to launch a ground operation into Lebanon in response to the Iranian proxy Hezbollah launching hundreds of rockets and unmanned aerial vehicles towards Israel's northern communities.
Hezbollah is a problem. It's been a problem for a long time, not just now. And it's a certain area, because I was with the other night a person whose parents live in Lebanon. This is a very substantial person, wealthy person, whose parents live in Lebanon. I said, really? How do you live in Lebanon? Your parents are living? Oh, yeah, they live there. And over the years, they've gotten used to the fact that it's being bombed. But they explained to me that it's really a different section of Lebanon. It's a section where Hezbollah is. And they get used to it, I guess. Hezbollah is a big problem, and they're rapidly being eliminated.
Meanwhile, in Israel, IDF spokesman Efi Defrin expanded on the latest vis-a-vis Israel's operations versus the Iranian proxy Hezbollah, which, as IDF Chief of General Staff Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir noted earlier this week, is clearly getting weaker, the weaker the Ayatollah regime in Iran gets as well.
As was stated by the Chief of Staff, the impact of harming and weakening the regime in Iran is also felt in the campaign against Hezbollah. In the past 24 hours, Division 91 forces have begun ground operations at key targets in southern Lebanon as part of strengthening the defense of northern communities. The forces are destroying terrorist infrastructure and eliminating terrorists. As I had noted, which reflects our operations in the field, IDF fighters will be a buffer between any threat and the residents of the north. We have bolstered our forces in Northern Command, and we will continue to intensify the operation in coming days.
General Defrin further expanded on a variety of operational efforts by the IDF against the terror regime in Iran.
We are constantly operating to deepen the damage to the Iranian regime and its branches, and to remove the threats to Israel over time. We are operating according to a plan and are achieving the goals we have set for ourselves so far. Our pilots are constantly attacking throughout Iran. In the past 24 hours, we hit the Revolutionary Guard's naval headquarters. The Iranian regime used this headquarters to turn the naval arena into a terrorist arena. In another attack in the heart of Tehran, we hit and destroyed a center for developing satellite attack capabilities, a center that posed a threat to space assets and satellites of Israel as well as of the entire world. In parallel, we continue to attack the Basij forces, the repressive Iranian forces. The regime's operatives live with a sense of persecution and are looking for places to hide. There is no immunity.
Meanwhile, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, in a film statement, asserted that Israel will work tirelessly to help the Iranian people achieve freedom.
This morning, we eliminated Ali Larijani. Ali Larijani is the boss of the Revolutionary Guards, which is the group of gangsters that de facto runs Iran. We also eliminated the commander of the basage alongside him. These are the gangsters' assistants, who spread terror on the streets of Tehran and other cities of Iran against the population. We are also operating there. We are operating from the air with Air Force aircraft, with drones. We are undermining this regime in the hope of granting the Iranian people a chance to remove it. It won't happen all at once. It won't happen easily. But if we persist in this, we will give them a chance to take their fate into their own hands. At the same time, we are helping our American friends in the Gulf. I spoke at length with President Trump yesterday on this issue. There is cooperation between our air forces and our navies, between me and President Trump and his team. We will help with both indirect attacks, which create tremendous pressure on the Iranian regime, and also with direct actions. There are many more surprises. We will wage war with stratagems. We will not reveal all the maneuvers here, but I told you, there are many.
The support which Israel provides the United States to include matters related to defending both Gulf Arab states as well as the waterways in the vicinity comes at a time when EU member states are failing to stand by the United States in securing the strategic Strait of Hormuz, upon which many of those countries are heavily reliant upon for energy products and fertilizers.
Nobody is ready to put their people in harm's way in the Strait of Hormuz. But like I said, we have to find, diplomatic ways to keep this open so that we don't have a, food crisis, fertilizers crisis, energy crisis in the world.
So you would imagine some kind of diplomatic solution, and then European navies could be involved there. Is that more likely?
Yes, that is what member states were saying. I mean, after the hostilities have stopped, then the case might be different.
The EU High Representative continued by claiming that the European institution does not really understand the moves of the United States versus the Islamic Republic of Iran, regardless of the Trump administration explicitly stating its war objectives publicly.
We are allies with America, but we don't really understand their moves recently. Like I said, also we haven't been consulted, and we don't really understand what are the objectives of this war. So I think this is the underlying feeling.
It is worth pointing out that Kaja Kallas, who formerly served as Prime Minister of Estonia, evidently failed to recognize the position of her own country, and despite serving as an apologist for Ukraine, she seemingly decided to disregard years of Iranian support for Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine. Thankfully, her country of Estonia has not, with Tallinn's top diplomat during a joint press conference with his Israeli counterpart, Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar, in Jerusalem today, emphasized support for both Israel and the United States in their war against the Ayatollah regime in Iran.
Iran's nuclear and missile programs, its support for terrorist organizations, and its cooperation with Russia in its war of aggression against Ukraine all pose serious threats to regional and global security. Estonia supports the efforts of Israel and the United States to ensure that Iran cannot pose such a threat. For years, we have closely monitoring the growing cooperation between Iran and Russia, including reports of military coordination and intelligence sharing. And we can say as well that Iran and Russia are the two different sides of the same coin of evil.
Thank you for watching TV7 Israel News, which is made possible by the generosity of our viewers. Please keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem and redemption of Israel. I'm Jonathan Hassan, wishing you an Erev Mevorach. God willing, until our next update, Shalom from Jerusalem.
Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Israel's military says it's killed the Iranian security chief, Ali Larijani, as the U.S. and Israel continue massive airstrikes across Iran. Larijani was among the most powerful figures in the Islamic Republic and helped direct nuclear negotiations with the U.S. and other Western powers. His reported assassination comes just days after he joined senior Iranian officials in a march through central Tehran in a public act of defiance against the U.S.-Israeli war. Israel also announced it had assassinated the Basij force commander, Gholam Reza Soleimani, in a separate airstrike. In the city of Iraq, officials say a U.S.-Israeli coalition bombing killed a 3-day-old infant and his 2-year-old sister, along with their mother and grandmother. In Tehran, Iranian Red Crescent workers searched for survivors through the rubble of damaged homes after an airstrike on Monday.
This alley is totally residential. Those dear residents who got stuck here are being rescued by the aid workers. The search continues.
Amnesty International reports an investigation found the U.S. was responsible for the attack on the Iranian girls' school in southern Iran that killed about 170 people, most of them schoolgirls, on the first day of the U.S.-Israeli war on Iran. Iran's foreign minister says U.S.-Israeli strikes have killed over 200 children. Meanwhile, the Pentagon's announced the deployment of thousands of additional U.S. Marines and warships to the Middle East. U.S. Central Command reports at least 200 U.S. troops have been injured since the U.S. and Israel launched attacks against Iran just over 2 weeks ago. 13 U.S. service members have been killed. In Israel, at least 7 people were wounded on Monday when a rocket launched from Lebanon struck residential buildings in the northern town of Nahariya. Elsewhere, debris from an Iranian missile fell onto the rooftop of the Greek Orthodox Patriarchate in Jerusalem, one of the holiest sites in Christianity, where tradition holds that Jesus was crucified. An Iranian missile also damaged the U.S. consulate residence building in Jerusalem, though no injuries were reported. Meanwhile, Iran continues to fire on Middle East countries that host U.S. military bases. Saudi Arabia's defense ministry said it intercepted nearly 100 Iranian drones in 24 hours, the largest single-day wave of attacks yet by Iran. In the United Arab Emirates, an Iranian drone triggered a huge fire at a key oil trading hub, coming just days after a similar attack triggered another fire at the site. In Iraq, an Iranian drone damaged the top floor of the Al Rashid Hotel in Baghdad's heavily fortified green zone Monday, amidst reports that Iraqi air defenses shot down an Iranian missile targeting the U.S. embassy there. Meanwhile, Kuwait and Qatar reported more Iranian drone and missile attacks. According to Goldman Sachs, if the war lasts until the end of April, the gross domestic products of Gulf states could plummet by up to 14% this year. In Lebanon, Israeli strikes have driven more than 1 million people from their homes and killed more than 880 people. Israeli troops launched ground operations in southern Lebanon Monday. Israel's defense minister, Israel Katz, said southern Lebanese residents will not return to their homes until the safety of Israelis near the border is guaranteed. This is a displaced mother who fled to Beirut due to Israeli attacks.
Of course, I was displaced, my house was damaged, the situation is difficult, of course. I mean, I can't describe to you the feeling that we're experiencing, but it's hard, very hard. It's hard to leave your home, hard to leave your land.
European countries are rejecting President Trump's call to send warships to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, despite Trump's threat of, quote, a very bad future, unquote, for NATO if it doesn't help the U.S. This is Kaja Kallas, the European Union's foreign policy chief.
There was no appetite from the member states to do that. As I said, this is nobody wants to go actively in the.
Did you know eating garlic raw skips is the most important step? Most people think garlic is already.
We're going to be joined by retired Marine Intelligence Officer Hal Kemper in a moment. Before that, let's track the latest on the war in the Middle East with Fox's Aisha Hasni.
I think NATO's making a very foolish mistake. This was a great test because we don't need them, but they should have been there.
President Trump slamming NATO while hosting the Irish Prime Minister in the Oval Office today, who at one point defended British Prime Minister Keir Starmer.
Keir is not Winston Churchill.
Keir Starmer has done a lot to reset the Irish-British relationship, but I do believe that he's a very earnest, sound person who I think you have a capacity to get on with.
The White House also battling internal pushback on the Iran strikes. Today, the director of the National Counterterrorism Center, Joe Kent, resigned, claiming Iran posed no imminent threat to our nation and that Trump bowed to pressure from Israel. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt pushing back on that, saying the president had, quote, strong and compelling evidence that Iran was going to attack the United States first.
I always thought he was weak on security, very weak on security.
Two sources from inside the administration confirmed to Fox News Kent was not involved in briefings about Iran. Democrats claim the Trump administration has no plan for victory.
It seems like they're always a few hours away from hanging the next mission accomplished sign around here, and we continue to suffer.
President Trump's trip to China now officially delayed due to the conflict as administration officials try to calm Americans, admitting the longer this goes on, it would hurt consumers.
If it were to be extended, it wouldn't really disrupt the U.S. economy very much at all. It would hurt consumers, but that's like really the last of our concerns right now because we're very confident that this thing is going ahead of schedule.
Also today, President Trump once again calling for the Senate to pass the Save America Act, threatening Republicans that if they do not vote for it, they will not receive an endorsement from him. The Senate is now officially debating that bill, which could last for several hours to several days. At the White House, I'm Aisha Hasni, Fox News.
In the meantime, we just heard from the U.S. military that they're using 5,000-pound deep penetrator munitions in Iran. Take a look. CENTCOM posting this, saying hours ago, U.S. forces successfully employed the 5,000-pound deep penetrator munitions on hardened Iranian missile sites along the country's coastline near the Strait of Hormuz. The Iranian anti-ship cruise missiles in these sites, they say, posed a risk to international shipping in the Strait. Retired Marine Intelligence Officer, National Security Analyst, and the host of the Strap podcast, Hal Kemper, is here with me. 5,000-pound deep penetrator munitions. Have we used these before?
Not that I'm aware of. This is the first time I think this particular one has been used. We've used some pretty advanced deep penetration ordnance, but this one is, as they're saying, this particular one was one that we've never used before. So I have to take their word on it, although it does sound similar to some other things that we have used. But these, one thing they've been doing, certainly for the last, I want to say 5-7 years, is a lot of research and development on some of these unique types of ordnance that can take out these deep underground revetments, facilities, tunnels, that they built, looking specifically at Iran, but also looking at other places like North Korea and other places around the world. We're just seeing more and more stuff where they bury their places where they store drones and ballistic missiles and everything else. And this one, it said specifically it hit a tunnel where they had a lot of anti-ship cruise missiles right along the coast. And so it sounds like it was a very good application. One thing I should mention is we're seeing heavy bombs.
咪話任何人知你買咗呢副眼鏡，因為佢哋根本未見過。日本知名。
You're watching live now. I'm Austin Westfall. My thanks to Christina Evans. She's had you covered the past few hours. I'll be up here with you the next few hours as we discuss the latest in the Middle East. Some videos that CENTCOM has posted within the past 24 hours as the U.S. and Iran are continuing to fire at each other as the war is reaching its third week. Today, Kuwait and Saudi Arabia intercepting more Iranian attacks. And last night, the U.S. striking a major target, Karg Island in the Persian Gulf, which is the heart of Iran's oil system. Retired Marine Intelligence Officer, National Security Analyst, and the host of the Strat podcast, Hal Kemper, is here with me. Hal, ultimately, when we talk about these types of stories, one of the main things is how are lawmakers discussing where we go from here? Lindsey Graham posting this earlier today. Iran's attempt to close the Strait of Hormuz is done at its own peril. President Trump's decision to take the war to Karg Island, the crown jewel of Iran's oil and gas company, was necessary, bold, and in my view, highly effective. This will help shorten the war. Seldom in warfare does an enemy provide you Karg Island that could dramatically alter the outcome of the conflict. If Iran loses control or the ability to operate its oil infrastructure from Karg Island, its economy is annihilated. He who controls Karg Island controls the destiny in this war, Graham says. Hal, if Karg Island is out of commission, if the U.S. has struck, and by the way, the U.S. says that they've struck as many as 90 different targets on the island. This is some video that CENTCOM posted of some of those strikes. If Karg is out of commission, does that present the option for the U.S. to take it over?
Well, it certainly does. What we hit was the military facilities, military installations, all the security positions, all the security, I should say, of the island and all the military positions. That's what it, and whereas I don't have an exact laydown of every target that was hit, basically what the White House and the Pentagon are saying is that all of them were hit. And we certainly have the air power to do that. Does that mean that we took them all out? Well, I would point you to World War II and the Japanese. And we bombed the heck out of some of these islands. We go ashore, and a lot of people are still underground in revetments and tunnels. So I'm sure there's many who survived. But the issue is, can they militarily defend these islands? And that's an island where potentially a Marine Expeditionary Unit could make a big difference. They could bring the combat power, depending if there's really nothing there to fight against, that could have the combat power. But I'll tell you, the real problem is, how did they reinforce that island? 90% of the oil that goes out of, and not an insignificant amount of the gas, of natural gas, goes out of Iran, goes through Karg Island. And if they don't have that operating, and we've just made a demonstration to Iran saying, look, we could shut you down. I mean, it would have been very easy to launch airstrikes to take out all the oil producing and all the oil pumping and storage facilities there, that we could literally shut you down. At that point, you can't send oil to anybody. And there still is oil that they're letting through, that the Iranians are letting through the Strait of Hormuz that's going over to China. I just saw where they're letting oil that's going over to India go to the Strait of Hormuz. This is purely political, trying to align those two countries to support Iran more vigorously in what's going on. But the reality is, if we took out Karg, if they continue doing that, we could take it out. And the other side is, we haven't seen massive sea mining of the Strait of Hormuz. If they do that, they can't ship anything out. If the Iranians do that, they have shut down not only Western powers from getting oil, but also China and India, anybody from getting, and that shuts down the revenue flow completely. But we've told them that, hey, we will hit Karg Island much more definitively, taking out the oil, energy capabilities or oil capabilities if we do that. Now, I just want to say one thing. It's an island. How would they reinforce that island now that they've lost all that military presence? It's going to go by air or it's going to go by sea. My understanding is we knocked out the airfield, and I would say if they sent a ship full of troops or military supplies over to that island, with the air power that we have in the area, I don't think that ship would make it over. So I think we made a pretty profound statement.
This expeditionary unit that the U.S. is sending to the Middle East, would this be right up their alley if they were to try to put boots on the ground at Karg Island? This is an amphibious operation. Hal, this would be right up their alley?
Absolutely. That's what they train for. That's what they're there for. It's not a huge force. I mean, the ground force component's only about 800 troops. But I'd really have to look at what's left on Karg Island. They're obviously going to look very closely to see what's left on Karg Island. The other thing, too, is because the distances are relatively small, it wouldn't be tough if the MEU actually made the initial entry, set up a forced beachhead, take a key terrain, and then we could resupply or reinforce through air or by sea forces coming over from Kuwait or elsewhere if we want to, air deploy some additional ground forces in Kuwait. So that's very possible we could do that. And the other thing I'd point out is they don't have to worry about air support. There's more air support available in the Persian Gulf to any U.S. ground forces than they can possibly imagine. So yeah, it's very achievable that they can make a big dent. And they may take Karg Island, we could own it.
You and I were talking offline. We were talking about the idea of the U.S. having air superiority over the region. You talked about the idea of air superiority versus air supremacy. We have superiority right now. What's the difference?
Well, the difference is air superiority says that we basically dominate in the air. All right. We don't control all the air at any time. We haven't knocked out all of their air defense capabilities and everything else, but we do dominate. I mean, we are clearly the dominant air power over all of Iran. In certain sections of Iran, we have what's called air supremacy. When you have air supremacy, that means pretty much you own the airspace. You control it. There isn't much of anything that they can put up to oppose you. I've heard air supremacy actually talked about when there is some latent air defense capability, but it's just not much that poses much of a threat. And so we have not declared air supremacy over Iran yet, but we could. And I think at some point we're going to get there. And once that happens, that means everywhere in Iran is kind of laid open to airstrikes. At that point, the regime can't defend anywhere on the ground from the air. And that opens up the possibility of causing enormous attrition, which is already occurring with the Revolutionary Guard Corps and the Basij militia, which is that radical militia that was killing protesters in December and January. That's what opens up that possibility. And certainly something like Carter Island would be completely open. And I think it is now, but it'd be completely open to whatever we wanted to do with it.
Trump's former national security advisor, John Bolton, posted this today. He says, "I favor regime change in Iran, but I'm deeply worried that inadequate preparation will prevent that goal from being achieved. There seems to be holes in the strategy, from the lack of coordination with the opposition to the lapse in preparing the American people ahead of the attack." Hal, what could he mean by preparing the American people ahead of the attack?
Well, traditionally, when we've done stuff like this, and if you go back to Desert Storm, or if you go back to the invasion of Iraq, even going into to some extent, of course, that was immediately post 9/11, going into Afghanistan. But definitely, if you look at Iraq, there was a really big buildup. I remember, Colin Powell, who was Secretary of State, former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, gave that impassioned speech before the United Nations, where he talked about all the weapons of mass destruction stuff that Iraq had, which turned out later on it was from a really bad intelligence source that they got some of that. But there was a real buildup to build up public support, to convince Congress that this was the right thing that we needed to do, and basically layer it in there. This one, we almost went in cold. It's not that we hadn't talked about the problems with Iran and things like that, but basically we were in negotiations with them. There was no preparation of the people of the United States for going to war, and you see that reflected in the numbers. I think there's only 27% of the voters or those out there right now actually support or approve of the war. So. We went in kind of cold. It was a very risky business. I mean, if you do something like that, you got to be successful, and you better win at the end of the day. But there was no mental preparation for that. Now, as far as engaging with the opposition, I'm not sure. I don't know. I think there's been a full court press effort to try and engage with members of the opposition, protesters, and others who could step in when the regime is help overthrow the regime. I don't think we want to advertise that. I don't think we want to say anything. In fact, we kind of advertised that a lot going into Iraq in 2003. And as it turns out, those that we were pointing to say they're going to come in and help run the country, that didn't work out at all. In fact, they were pretty much rejected by the Iraqi people. So I think we're keeping it deliberately quiet this time around, learning the lessons from 23 years ago, and letting this at least appear to happen much more organically. Although I can't imagine that whomever in the anti-regime movement dominates.
kill 晒啲深淺層嘅色斑，連患故嘅荷爾蒙斑都搞得掂嚇，色斑冇晒。 膚色都白淨晒，秘訣就係8D 超皮秒祛斑療程，標靶式祛斑，仲要係4倍嘅祛斑功能。呢個8D 超皮秒真係好犀利啊！一定要試啊！
就我哋皮秒界嘅天花板啦。咁佢以最新嘅超皮秒技術啦，佢祛斑嘅效果咧比起4D 咧係加強咗4倍㗎。咁可以幫助我哋標靶式祛斑，一次咧已經即時淡斑，連膚色咧都可以改善埋啊！
比4D 強4倍咁，即係話以前要用4倍嘅時間，而家就8D 一次搞掂
啦，已經係升級版嘅技術啦。咁佢可以追蹤咧我哋基底嘅黑色素咧，以標靶嘅形式咧係粉碎色斑嘅。咁所以咧係可以比起以往咧係快咗4倍嘅效果啊！
又唔痛，又唔會反黑，仲會即時見效嚇。8D 超皮秒祛斑療程真係好勁，仲快啲登記！
Come on, bro. You can do it. Yes, sir. Nice shot. Too slow! No!
Doomsday, Last Survivor. Play now.
If they do take over, that we haven't had some level of communication with them before.
Let's talk about California. California was a major piece of the story that we were covering this week. California Governor Gavin Newsom said there's no imminent threat to the state, despite a warning earlier this week from the FBI that Iran could send drones to the West Coast in retaliation for the war. The FBI recently warning police departments about Iran and a possible California strike, although the alert also said that it was unverified information. Governor Newsom posting or saying this earlier this week. Let's listen.
We've been aware of that information. We've been working collaboratively through the SOC, which we established right after the war began, the State Operations Center, working with the Office of Emergency Service, but also working locally to make sure we transmit any information that we have received. Drone issues have been always top of mind, and we've assembled some work groups specifically around those concerns.
So Hal, given a little bit of what we've heard from Newsom and given what we've heard from the FBI and given what we've heard from the White House itself, Caroline Leavitt talked about this week. She sort of downplayed the threat a little bit. What's your strategic risk assessment for the potential of an Iranian attack in the lower 48?
Well, first off, we are seeing attacks. Most of them are what we call lone wolves. But there are clearly a number of them have been linked or inspired by what's happening in the Middle East. All right. Whether it's tied directly to support for the regime in Iran or whether it's just radical anti-U.S. radical Islamic extremism, shall we say, with the ISIS case or cases that that's opportunistic, which is they see the U.S. involved in the war in the Middle East and they're doing attacks here. Regardless, we've seen those types of things. Now, have we seen a sleeper cell or a sleeper agent? As far as I know, that hasn't happened. It's not to say they're not there, and I will tell you that they are assessed as being present in the U.S. going back decades. So we know that that's a present thing. Now, this particular attack the particular threat, I should say, they're talking about, this was intelligence that the FBI had passed to members of the Joint Terrorism Task Forces throughout the state of California. Those task forces have task force officers who are from various state and local law enforcement agencies throughout the state, and that's how the information got to all the law enforcement departments around the state. So that's one way. There's other ways it gets out there as well. It gets transmitted as well, but that's one way it happened. And my understanding is that originated from something that the Coast Guard had, which was a maritime threat piece of intelligence. And it was that the Iranians were talking, and it never clear there was any execution phase, but there was discussion in early February, well before this war began. But when the war was a possibility, they were talking about the idea of putting a ship offshore of California and then launching drones to hit various targets, pre-selected targets in California. honestly, that's not an unrealistic thing that the Iran could have potentially pulled off. There's a lot of maritime traffic off the coast. It's very difficult to pick it up. The drones definitely would have the legs, depending on what drones they use, to get into California and do stuff. I don't think it would have been a massive wave of destruction or anything like that. I think it would have been a few smaller attacks, but it would have got attention. It would have created a certain amount of terror and uncertainty throughout the state. But I actually think the threat from sleeper cells and potentially other terrorists that are inspired by this using drones is a lot higher. And we don't have a great drone defensive capability domestically, and it's difficult to do. There's a lot of political reasons, a lot of legal reasons, ethical reasons, but we just don't have the same thing. You don't see the same thing that like they have in air defense in the Middle East, sitting around, iconic or critical infrastructure locations in California. So drones are a big, big problem, even though this thing wasn't a huge threat because we never saw that they actually executed it. It's not something where we should ignore the threat from drones.
Make it a habit. 7 minutes of Tai Chi every morning, all the way for 1 month. In 1 week, you'll feel better. In 2 weeks, you look better. In 1 month, your wife won't believe your results. Here's a Tai Chi workout plan made for men over 50. These beginner-friendly exercises take just 7 minutes a day. Tai Chi is the best medicine for men over 50, and it's a key to long-lasting health and vitality. It's more than a workout. It's a game changer for your life and longevity. Just open the app and follow along.
Where else can you trade stocks, options, and bonds around the clock? Come to Interactive Brokers and trade over 10,000 US stocks, ETFs, index futures, and index options when it's convenient for you. Open your account today at Interactive Brokers.
Some incredibly sad news this week. We learned that all 6 crew members aboard that KC-135 refueling aircraft that crashed in Western Iraq are dead. The circumstances that led to the crash are being investigated, but we know it was not a hostile or friendly fire incident. Hal, this incident is bringing the U.S. death toll to at least 13 service members. Do casualty figures have an impact on the troops that are deployed to these areas?
To some extent, especially if they're larger casualty figures, they do. I will say that what you saw, these are pretty small and relatively isolated. The biggest one, from what I can, certainly from what we can see, is the one where they hit the Kuwaiti base, the U.S. base in Kuwait, and they hit basically a tactical operations center for a big sustainment unit that was out there. And that's what caused the most casualties. And then this KC-135 incident. But I will say this, with KC-135s, and everybody knows this, in-flight refueling is a very risk-intensive effort. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. That's why they train so hard. And we have seen catastrophic events with in-flight refueling that take place in peacetime ops with regular training or regular operations. So it's not something that's exclusive to combat environments, although the combat environment does add a certain amount of intensity to what's going on there. But aviation mishaps happen, and I don't think that was a stunning blow to the morale or any of the psychology of those out there. I mean, it's a tragic situation, but we have, the military of any institution is conditioned for these tragic events to take place, and it's very sad that it occurred, but it also reinstills that need to do more training, more readiness, be more careful. All those things that go into mitigating, operational risk.
As soon as we heard about the loss of this plane, it was even before we had confirmation of the well-being of the service members themselves on the plane. But as soon as we heard that the plane was down, the U.S. military was quick to say it wasn't hostile activity and it wasn't friendly fire activity. Why is it important from their perspective to make that clear as soon as possible?
Well, that communicates to everybody that they weren't doing something with this plane where they had placed it intentionally into harm's way. and they're making that very clear that this was not related to Iranian action. They don't want to give Iran any opportunity to claim some propaganda victory. And certainly with Iran, if you look at the amount of AI generated stuff they've been putting out there, such as that really kind of hokey thing where they were saying that they took a bunch of Delta Force soldiers, and you can look at it and go, that's the worst CGI I've ever seen. But they've been putting stuff out there like this is actual real stuff, and they've been putting AI generated images of Iranian missiles hitting our aircraft carriers and all sorts of things. So we just wanted to get out there fast, quick, make sure everybody understands this is not due to hostile fire. This is not something Iran did. But I mean, it doesn't take away from the tragedy of what occurred, but it wasn't something where we want Iran to use that to their advantage in some way.
We got this from President Trump. He posted this morning. He said many countries, especially those who are affected by Iran's attempted closure of the Hormuz Strait, will be sending warships in conjunction with the United States of America to keep the strait open and safe. We have already destroyed 100% of Iran's military capability, but it's easy for them to send a drone or two, drop a mine, or deliver a close-range missile somewhere along or in this waterway, no matter how badly defeated they are. Hopefully China, France, Japan, South Korea, the UK, and others that are affected by this artificial constraint will send ships to the area so that the Hormuz Strait will no longer be a threat by a nation that has been totally decapitated. In the meantime, the United States will be bombing the hell out of the shoreline and continually shooting Iranian boats and ships out of the water. One way or the other, we will soon get the Hormuz Strait open, safe, and free, the president says. He names a couple of countries there, Hal. China, France, Japan, South Korea, the UK, and others. What's the likelihood that we get cooperation from, some of the NATO countries he mentions there, but he also mentions China as well.
The fascinating, when I saw that initially, I said, China, interesting. There must be some discussion we're having with China on this. Obviously, China is very, very dependent on Iranian oil. It's a big issue for them. And they have been getting some, but certainly not in the levels that they were getting it before this whole event took place. So China has a vested interest to keep the Strait of Hormuz open, certainly for oil coming to China. But he also brought up Japan, South Korea. They also get a lot of oil that comes through the Strait of Hormuz, and they have very capable navies, and they could come in and provide escort. Interesting with France. France has, obviously not been very supportive of everything going on here. In fact, quite the opposite. And the same with Britain politically, although Britain is allowing us to use their air bases to launch strikes into Iran. So you're seeing a sea change, so to speak, of countries probably moving from, well, we don't like the fact that this war is taking place to, okay, the war has taken place. It is a fact. And we don't want to see our oil cut off. So we need more naval presence to do those escort missions. It is a reality that even we, quote, bomb the hell out of all those short positions, there still can be an occasional drone, occasional anti-ship missile that could get fired in there. There could be some mining activity that takes place on the Iranians. You can't knock it all out with 100% certainty. But if you have those ships out there, particularly if they bring in minesweeping ships, that could make an enormous difference. And if we can start getting that oil going out in a major way, 20% of the world's oil that normally goes to the Strait of Hormuz, if we can get that coming out, that would make a big difference. And by the way, if China was part of a combined task force to escort ships going in and out of there, that's something that the Iranian regime would have to turn around and that would make their heads, I'm not going to say make their heads explode, but it would make their heads go, oh my gosh, our number one client, a customer of Iranian oil is now in this U.S.-led naval escort mission. That's something that tells them that their ability to prevail in this war is pretty much nil.
Let's talk about northern Israel and southern Lebanon. A live look at Beirut. We've had this camera keeping an eye on the suburbs of Beirut as the IDF has been targeting Hezbollah infrastructure. A little dark, but there is a strike that's happened recently. You can see some of the smoke emanating from one of the targets they've struck. We don't know what exactly they hit, What we do know is that in recent weeks, they've been aiming for Hezbollah command centers, launch pads, things of this nature, communication infrastructure, things like that. Hal, interesting reporting coming out today. Israel and Lebanon are reportedly expected to hold direct talks soon. This would be their first since the start of the war. Axios is saying that the French government has drafted a proposal to end the fighting in Lebanon. So Lebanon was drawn deep into this conflict when the IDF and Hezbollah reignited their fighting, Hal. And the point of these discussions that are being reported would be to disarm Hezbollah. What are the main challenges with disarming them? The Lebanese government, the Israeli government, and the U.S. government, they all want them disarmed. So why hasn't it happened yet?
Well, first off, they're heavily armed and they've got a lot of missiles, more tactical, closer in missiles, not like the Iranian missiles, but they're still very, very capable missiles. They've been using those missiles to attack Israel. They've also attacked the British air bases or air base over in Cyprus offshore. Now, just so everyone understands, at one point, Lebanon was actually under France during the colonial era. So there is still a lot of French influence there. So this is kind of logical that France would step in and act as a peace broker, if you will, to coming together with this. But this goes to something we've talked about on air before, which was this big shift to take place. When Hezbollah, which was supposed to disarm per the ceasefire agreement, and the idea that they were supposed to pull back all their forces, they were supposed to disarm, they were supposed to be just a political entity, demilitarized. Well, they haven't really been complying with that. Israel has had to occasionally do airstrikes in order to reinforce the point that you're not supposed to be doing certain things. And then they join in with doing fighting basically on behalf of Iran. And if you get behind the curtain, after Nasrallah was gone, the Al-Quds arm of the Revolutionary Guard Corps of Iran had actually put their own people into many command positions with Hezbollah. So literally Iran was calling the shots militarily on what Hezbollah was doing. All of that puts together a situation where, look, Israel's got troops going into southern Lebanon, more troops going into southern Lebanon. They're hitting them with airstrikes. They're getting up into southern Beirut. The Lebanese government and basically Lebanese public sentiment is pretty much uniform, which is Hezbollah has got to go. And that was huge because that aligns completely with Israel's position, which is Hezbollah's got to go. And I was noting this alignment, and now we're seeing actual discussions taking place in Paris, up in France, where they are going to talk about a combined plan, essentially. One hopes a combined effort by the Lebanese government and Israel to demilitarize, disarm Hezbollah in a very concerted way. And that is a big change. That I have not seen before. That is a political sea change. It's a military sea change. It's a complete change of how things have been going over there. And it's a very welcome change to get rid of that horrific terrorist group, Hezbollah.
The people that have been following this conflict over the past 2 weeks, they've heard Iran-backed Hezbollah every single day. Hezbollah is backed by Iran. Let's do a primer for the people who might not understand the connection between the two. Hezbollah is largely based in southern Lebanon. We've seen throughout the course of the most recent iteration of the Gaza war that Hezbollah and the IDF has been trading blows. They've been doing that tit for tat. So how does Iran historically support Hezbollah, whether it be militarily, financially? And is it clear to us if that connection has been severed in some way, given some of the destruction we've seen toward Iranian forces, the elimination of Nasrallah? Has the pipeline between Iran and Hezbollah been disconnected in some ways?
Well, it's been dramatically disrupted. Just to go into it, okay, there's two different major faith groups in Islam, which is the Sunnis and the Shiites. All right, the Shiites are a distinct minority overall in Islam. However, there is an area called what's called the Shiite Crescent that kind of shoots up through Iran, across Iraq, Syria, and into the southern half of Lebanon. Hezbollah is a Shiite Islamic extremist group. They were stood up in the early 80s. They were the ones responsible with Iranian support of attacking our embassy and, of course, attacking the Marine barracks at Beirut International Airport, wherein that was the first time I personally knew someone killed by a terrorist was in that attack. And that's how they've been basically funneling arms, everything else you can think of, money, whatever, over to Hezbollah. Now, as you know, the Assad government, the Shiite Assad government, which was from that Alawite minority, which is the Shiite minority, they're out. Okay, and a former Al-Qaeda member is actually running Syria, and he has no love lost for certainly Assad's forces, and certainly no love lost for Iran or this Shiite Islamic extremism. And so he blocked off that way. They're not going to get anything coming from certainly from Israel, obviously, because that's Israel. And so they could get some stuff from the sea, but it was getting more and more difficult with everything that was going on in the Eastern Mediterranean. And so they're basically largely cut off. But with Iran, if they're no longer in the picture, there's no support for Hezbollah from anywhere coming in. And so they're seeing the writing on the wall. And of course, with those losses, they backfilled a lot of those key positions with Iranian Al-Quds force operatives, officers, senior officials actually doing that stuff. One thing I would also point out, if you track the crescent back, you may have seen, of course, today we announced that all Americans need to leave Iraq. That's a big announcement that's out there. And that was tied to these Shiite militias, which are under what's called the Popular Mobilization Forces in Iraq. The Iraqi government, for political reasons, has always tried to maintain some cordial relations with them. And they ostensibly are under the Ministry of Defense, but not very much. And they still continue to launch attacks every now and again towards the U.S. and towards Israel. But what we're saying, what we've obviously picked up on with, there was a strike, which was probably from the Popular Mobilization Forces against the U.S. Embassy compound in Baghdad. And we're looking at, and we're just saying, get all the Americans out of there. And that's part of the Shiite extremism, which is all interconnected under the Al-Quds force with what we're seeing in Hezbollah. I hope I kind of explained that well. It's a little bit complicated, but they're all kind of connected together, and they're all basically Al-Quds forces calling it. And the bottom line is, the Shiite militias are in Iraq kind of realize the same thing that Hezbollah does. If Iran's gone, their sponsor, their power base has just been pulled out from under them. So their days as a serious military or paramilitary force in Iraq are numbered as well. So what you're seeing is a lot of these groups are kind of going all in. The only one to really watch is the Houthis to see what they do.
Yeah, it's important to connect this stuff. Hal is the host of the Strat podcast. What's coming up on Strat, Hal?
Well, we're going to talk about the Middle East. And
you don't say.
Yeah, it's surprising. And to talk about the Middle East, I'm going to talk about how this ties to some of the threats here at home that we've seen. We've had a spate of these, for lack of a better term, terror attacks across the country. I mean, we just saw the thing in Michigan with the synagogue, and we saw that rather amazing, not just the attack that took place at Old Dominion University, but also that the ROTC students there, how quickly they rallied and got in there and took the guy down and stopped the attack. That was something I was very pleased to see. We talk about run, hide, fight. Well, you had ROTC students, Reserves Officer Training Corps students, that they saw the situation and they worked through that problem real fast. They said fight, and they knew what to do, and they stopped the attack and saved a lot of lives in the process. So pleased to see that response. Sorry to see, obviously sad to see the attack and a professor there was killed, but it's just one of those things that I think it needs to have a closer look.
Hal Kempfer, and by the way, you can listen to Strat anywhere podcasts are available. Thanks. See you soon.
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44, a complete AI creation platform. Describe what you want and watch it take shape. You can plan, customize, and expand in any direction. From tools built for one to platforms ready for many. From passion projects to enterprise-grade systems. Everything is built in and ready to launch. It's a new world of creation where you can go as far as your imagination takes you. Can you imagine it? Let's make your dream a reality right now.
Instagram now lets you send automated DMs to new followers instantly. Now, most people are going to use this to just blast links to their products, but I'll be doing something much smarter for myself and our clients. Step 1, we send a genuine thank you message first. Then we ask which of 3 topics this person is most interested in. These can be the top 3 things that people tend to DM you about. When someone picks one, they're going to get an automatic DM that's going to contain a link to a reel about that specific topic. And that reel includes a call to action to comment. Once they comment, they're going to enter one of your other DM automations naturally. So in just minutes, you can turn followers into buyers by being helpful instead of pushy. If you want to learn more about Follow to DM, just click the link below.
David Muir, ABC's World News Tonight, America's most watched newscast. Now streaming same day with all the breaking news of the day on Disney Plus. Most watched, most trusted. Now on Disney Plus every night.
Tonight, the breaking news as we come on the air, one of President Trump's top counterterrorism officials resigns, saying Iran posed no imminent threat. Also tonight here, the explosive boom, the stunning sight tonight seen in several states, the 7-ton meteor, and you'll see it. Tonight, the director of the National Counterterrorism Center resigning, claiming Iran posed no imminent threat to the U.S. Tonight, President Trump responds. Also tonight here, the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad coming under fire again. James Longman in Iraq. And just in tonight, the images, Israeli strikes now hitting Iranian police right in the streets of Tehran after the major news today that an Israeli strike has killed one of Iran's most powerful surviving leaders. Here in the U.S. tonight, that 7-ton meteor shooting across the sky.
Whoa, what the was that?
The sonic boom heard over multiple states, 6 feet in diameter. The images tonight, digging out the major storm across several states and the dangerous winds in the Northeast. Hundreds of thousands without power at this hour. Thousands of flights canceled and delayed. Here in New York City, the winds fueling a major fire in Manhattan. Reports of injuries just as the annual St. Patrick's Day parade was set to begin. Tonight, the wife and mother who wrote a children's book about grief after the death of her husband, now found guilty of killing him. How prosecutors say she did it. The collision on the tracks, an Amtrak train filled with passengers and an 18-wheeler. Tonight, just days before March Madness, a star player now under arrest. Tonight, one of the world's most elusive artists, hidden no longer, has Banksy been revealed. Also tonight, a former Syracuse University quarterback dies at just 28 years old. And tributes tonight to the longtime co-host of Showtime at the Apollo.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with David Muir.
Good evening. We begin tonight with several breaking stories. One incredible sight, that 7-ton meteor across several states in a moment here. But we begin with the war in Iran. President Trump's top counterterrorism official resigning tonight, saying Iran posed, quote, no imminent threat to the U.S. Late today, the president lashing out after Joe Kent, his hand-picked director of the National Counterterrorism Center, quit his post. Tonight, President Trump also furious. NATO allies are refusing to help protect the critical Strait of Hormuz more than 2 weeks after President Trump started the war. And tonight, Iran now confirming its national security chief has been killed in an Israeli airstrike. And a short time ago, the images coming in, flames rising from the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad. What we've learned, Iran-backed groups hitting multiple targets. Rachel Scott leading us off here with this high-level resignation tonight and President Trump's response.
Tonight, the administration's top counterterrorism official resigning in protest over President Trump's war with Iran, declaring Iran posed no imminent threat to our nation. Joe Kent, director of the National Counterterrorism Center, writing, I cannot in good conscience support the ongoing war in Iran. It is clear that we started this war due to pressure from Israel and its powerful American lobby. Kent accusing Israel of a misinformation campaign to deceive Trump into believing that Iran posed an imminent threat to the United States, and that should he strike now, there was a clear path to swift victory. This was a lie. President Trump, who has long supported Kent's political career, despite Kent's controversies and past associations with anti-Semites, today brushing off his resignation.
And I always thought he was a nice guy, but I always thought he was weak on security, very weak on security. I didn't know him well.
Today, the top Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee, Mark Warner, saying Joe Kent's record is deeply troubling. But on this point, he is right. There was no credible evidence of an imminent threat from Iran. It comes as the president lashes out at America's NATO allies for refusing his demand to help reopen the Strait of Hormuz, more than 2 weeks after President Trump launched the war himself. Germany declaring it's not our war.
We can't be at every place to support a war which we didn't start it.
From the UK, a similar message. And today, French President Emmanuel Macron
Nous ne sommes pas partie prenante au conflit.
saying France will never take part in operations to open or liberate the Strait of Hormuz in the current context.
I think NATO's making a very foolish mistake.
After calling for Europe's help, tonight the president saying he doesn't need it after all.
Well, we don't need too much help, and we don't need any help, actually.
The president clearly frustrated with our NATO allies, but they have been very clear that this is not their war, saying the president did not consult with them before launching those strikes against Iran. And tomorrow, all eyes will be on Capitol Hill. The president's national security team will be testifying before Congress, and they will certainly face many questions about whether Iran posed an imminent threat to the United States, David.
And you'll be watching that hearing for us, Rachel Scott, tonight. Thank you. This evening, just in, new images of the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad coming under attack again, what we've learned at this hour. And tonight, from inside Iran, you'll see the flames shooting from the streets. Israel now targeting police checkpoints in Tehran. The Israelis say some Iranians are now helping Israel with the targets. And Iran now confirming tonight its national security chief has been killed. All of this as gas prices in the U.S. are up now about 90 cents a gallon since this war began. James Longman from the region again tonight.
Tonight, the dramatic images coming in from Tehran, raging flames in the streets. Videos circulating online show the Israelis turning their focus to local regime targets. The IDF says they've hit dozens of police checkpoints and vehicles in Tehran. An Israeli intelligence source tonight tells ABC News some Iranians themselves are now sharing locations where regime militia are on patrol for the Israelis to strike. This amid a brutal blow to Iran's chain of command. Israel killing Iran's top national security chief, Ali Larijani, calling him the de facto leader of the regime. That same strike also killing the commander of Iran's feared religious militia, the Basij, Gholam-Reza Soleimani. That militia behind the bloody crackdown on Iranians in the streets protesting against the regime back in January that left nearly 7,000 dead. Israel's tactic to help Iranians take to the streets again, despite enormous danger. And tonight, Iranian proxies targeting the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad yet again, flames rising from the compound. Incredible video shows the moment a massive gun that protects the U.S. Embassy shoots an Iranian drone out of the sky. And with oil prices rising, Iran struck a 17th ship today in the critical Strait of Hormuz. In the US, gas prices have risen 90 cents since the start of the war, now averaging $3.84 a gallon. And for only the second time in US history, diesel prices have now hit $5 a gallon. Economists warn this will now have a ripple effect across the US economy.
And these attacks on the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad tonight, David, were pretty extraordinary. Flames could be seen inside the embassy compound. U.S. forces are tonight responding here in Iraq against those militia, but Iran is pulling at every lever across this region to target American interests. David.
James Longman and the team inside Iraq tonight as those attacks are underway. James, thank you. Back here in the U.S. tonight and to this incredible sight seen in several states, a 7-ton meteor shooting across the sky. The sonic boom heard over multiple states. The meteor 6 feet in diameter, the ground shaking. Here's Rhiannon Alley tonight.
Tonight, NASA says this bright red fireball streaking through the sky, moving at 40,000 miles per hour and seen from at least 10 states, is a rare daylight meteor crashing into Earth.
What the was that?
The asteroid bursting through the Earth's atmosphere, sending loud sonic booms, rattling homes from Ohio to Kentucky. The blast so powerful it shook the ground, the rumbling registering on a seismograph.
It was just like a boom, like that.
The meteor seen just before 9 a.m. for barely 5 seconds, traveling more than 34 miles in the upper atmosphere before breaking apart above Medina, Ohio, and seen across the Northeast.
Anybody see or hear what blew up? Definitely too big for fireworks. We felt a shockwave. We're not sure what it is, but it was big.
NASA says the meteor, nearly 6 feet in diameter, weighing roughly 7 tons, lit up the sky. It was even spotted by a NOAA satellite in space, unleashing the same amount of energy as 250 tons of TNT.
This thing just broke apart violently, scattered fragments everywhere. And this explosion generated a shock wave or a pressure wave that traveled to the ground. And that's the explosions people saw.
Aisha Jones lives in Maple Heights outside Cleveland and had just put her small children down for a nap when she says her house shook.
I immediately thought that somebody ran into my house or something big had hit the house.
David, NASA says what makes this so uncommon is that it went over a populated area. And while 40,000 miles per hour is really fast for a human, it's actually slow for a meteor. David?
Yeah, it's all perspective. Imagine being one of those drivers today who we heard in that piece, Rhiannon. Thank you. Now to the major storm tonight across several states, the dangerous winds in the Northeast, and of course, continuing chaos at airports. And behind it all, a new blast of cold air moving in from Florida to the Northeast. Freeze warnings tonight. The cold from Florida to the Carolinas, New York to Boston. With hundreds of thousands digging out, thousands of flights canceled and delayed tonight. And here's Gio Benitez.
Tonight, travel trouble on the ground and in the air as the Midwest digs out from a record-breaking blizzard and neighborhoods up and down the East Coast clean up after violent storms. Wind gusts over 70 miles an hour from Florida to the Northeast. Outside Boston, wind tearing apart the scaffolding, leaving it hanging over the roadway in Brockton. Crews in Attleboro had to cut this massive tree into pieces and use a crane to clear it off this home. Just outside Philadelphia, Ryan Keene assessing the damage after this tree fell right on his son's bedroom.
My roofer guy's here to see what damage is done there, and we're going to go from there.
Those winds also knocking out power to more than 500,000 across the region. Meanwhile, the Midwest digging out from record snow after dozens of trucks and cars got stranded for more than a day on Interstate 43 just outside Green Bay. That major interstate finally reopening today. West of Marquette, Michigan, families using snow blowers and shovels trying to dig out 9-foot snow drifts encasing homes. And another 1,000 flights canceled today and more delayed because of weather, with TSA staffing issues at some major airports. The FAA temporarily halting Delta flights to Atlanta this morning after the airline ran out of room to park their planes. United also requesting a ground stop for the same problem overnight in Houston. And David, one more note here about air travel. The CEOs for the major airlines say that the soaring cost of fuel is raising ticket prices. In fact, United fares are already up 15 to 20%. David.
One more example of how this is hitting the consumer tonight. Gio Benitez on this again for us. Gio, thank you. By the way, those winds fueling a major fire in New York City just as the annual St. Patrick's Day parade was set to begin. Here's Aaron Katersky with the pictures tonight.
Oh, my God.
Tonight, 2 people injured after a wind-driven fire on a high-rise rooftop. Clouds of thick, roiling smoke darkening Midtown Manhattan. Firefighters obscured by the blackened haze.
Manhattan, all hands go on work. Fire from a commercial building.
The HVAC system ignited atop a 28-story building at 43rd Street and 5th Avenue just before 10 a.m. as firefighters, police officers, and other marchers were staging nearby for the annual St. Patrick's Day parade. It took dozens of firefighters to extinguish the fire, finally dousing the last of the flames after an hour and a half.
It was a wind-driven event. The units took about 140 fire and EMS personnel to be on scene to take care of the situation.
The building was vacant, save for the construction workers, turning it from office space into residential apartments.
It looks like the EMS.
An EMS lieutenant and a police officer suffered smoke inhalation. The damage was contained to the building's roof, David. The cause of the fire is under investigation. David?
Aaron Katersky with us. Thank you, Aaron. In North Georgia tonight, a gunman reportedly killed by police after storming a VA clinic and shooting a worker there. Police responding to the Pickens County Veterans Affairs Clinic in Jasper this afternoon, confronting the suspect outside. Police say officers shot the suspected gunman during the encounter. The shooting victim was then airlifted to a nearby hospital. No word tonight on the victim's condition or a motive. We turn now to a case making national headlines. The wife and mother who wrote a children's book about grief after the death of her husband. She's now been found guilty of killing him and how prosecutors say she did it. Here's Trevor Ault.
Tonight, vindication for the family of Eric Richins after a jury swiftly convicted his wife, Corey, of his murder.
Guilty of aggravated murder.
It's been a long time coming, so just very happy that we got justice for my brother.
The Utah mother was accused of poisoning her husband with a fentanyl-laced cocktail. And a month before her arrest, she appeared on TV promoting a children's book she said she wrote to help her kids cope with the grief.
My husband passed away unexpectedly last year. It completely took us all by shock.
Prosecutors say Corey Richins killed her husband for money because she was deeply in debt and wanted to start a new life with a new man. They showed the jury body camera footage the day of the murder, where they claimed Corey was pretending to cry.
Corey Richins hides her face because she doesn't know how to react because she is not grieving. She's not grieving because she feels no grief. She just murdered Eric.
They also played this video of Corey laughing during a celebration of life party the day after the murder. David, Corey Richins faces 25 years to life in prison. She'll be sentenced May 13th. But what about her husband's 44th birthday? David.
Trevor Ault with us tonight. Trevor, thank you. Tonight, disturbing allegations against a civil rights icon, Cesar Chavez, the late co-founder of the United Farm Workers. The union now says it will not take part in this month's celebrations honoring Chavez following allegations of possible abuse involving young women and girls. The union says it has no firsthand knowledge of the allegations, calling them, quote, profoundly shocking. Chavez was credited with organizing migrant farm workers starting in California and helping to improve their quality of life. When we come back tonight, the tributes this evening for a well-known name at the Apollo and the former Syracuse University quarterback who has died at just 28 years old. Also ahead, look at this, the collision on the tracks, an Amtrak train filled with passengers and an 18-wheeler. Also tonight, just days before March Madness begins, a star player now under arrest tonight. This evening, one of the world's most elusive artists, has Banksy been revealed? Well, what the artist is now saying tonight about this, we'll be right back. Tonight, the collision involving an Amtrak train and an 18-wheeler just outside Houston. The train traveling from Los Angeles had 100 passengers when it crashed near a rail crossing. The impact knocking that green shipping container from the truck's bed. Authorities say at least 2 people injured. This could have been much worse. Tonight, Alabama men's basketball star Aden Holloway arrested on drug charges just days before the NCAA tournament kicks off. Police arresting Holloway Monday after they reportedly found 2 pounds of marijuana at home in Tuscaloosa. Holloway now out on bond tonight. Alabama's coach saying the team plans to play without Holloway in Friday's game against Hofstra. When we come back here tonight, the tributes this evening for a well-known name at the Apollo. And one of the world's most elusive artists, has Banksy been revealed tonight? What the artist is now saying. To the index of other news tonight, former Syracuse University quarterback Rex Culpepper has died at the age of 28. Culpepper played 30 games for Syracuse between 2017 and 2020. Rex notably overcame cancer at the age of 20 while still part of the team. Tonight, SU releasing a statement saying Rex played football as fierce as he lived life. There's no word yet on a cause of death tonight. Tributes this evening to Kiki Shepard, the longtime co-host of Showtime at the Apollo. For 15 years, Shepard made her mark on the famed talent showcase with her signature style and sense of humor. She shared the Apollo stage with several celebrity co-hosts, including Monique, Steve Harvey, and Sinbad. Relatives tonight sharing that Shepard died from a heart attack on Monday. Kiki Shepard was 74. Tonight, world-famous graffiti artist Banksy has kept the world guessing, of course, for decades. And this evening, a new report claiming to know the artist's identity. A Reuters investigation says Banksy is, quote, beyond dispute, 51-year-old Robin Gunningham from England. The Reuters report says he changed his name in 2008 to David Jones to maintain the mystery. Well, tonight, Banksy's lawyer pushing back, saying the artist, quote, does not accept many of the details in the Reuters report. We'll see. When we come back tonight, America Strong this evening, the father and his 2 daughters, what that dad was about to reveal, and he's standing by right here tonight.
ABC World News Tonight with David Muir, sponsored by Teva in support of the mental health community.
Finally tonight here, America Strong. After 27 years, a police sergeant and his emotional farewell on the radio. Tonight, on this St. Patrick's Day, the bagpipes, the send-off for a beloved police sergeant on his final day. From his fellow officers and his proud daughters, In Ketchikan, Alaska, Sergeant Ty Walker now retiring, ending his final shift with this message from his squad car.
After 27 years of service, I'm signing off for the last time. To my brothers in blue, thank you for standing on the line with me. And to the community, it's been my honor to serve you. Every shift I've started with this thought: leave everyone better than you find them. It wasn't always possible, but I did my best. God bless. Stay safe.
And then Sergeant Walker's daughters, Allie and Caitlin, and his 1-year-old granddaughter, Everly, sitting right there too.
Sergeant Walker, for nearly 3 decades, you have shown up for strangers on their worst days. The community of Ketchikan owes you a great debt, and your family is endlessly proud. We admire you more than words can express, and we are so grateful to call you our father.
And right here tonight,
hey, David.
After 27 years, Sergeant Walker now officially retired.
Retirement is great. It was an honor to serve my community. I wish you and all those in law enforcement well, especially those at my old department.
And his proud daughters, too.
Hi, David. Hi, David.
Allie and Caitlin.
There was nowhere else we would rather be for the man that gave everything he had for a community who didn't always see it.
Showing up for the man that has shown up for countless others was a no-brainer. So it was such an incredible moment, and I am so grateful that I got to be there.
Well, Sergeant Walker, thank you for your service. Your granddaughter's waiting. I'll see you tomorrow. Good night.
David Muir, the most trusted anchor in America, the most watched anchor in America. Thank you for making World News Tonight with David Muir the #1 newscast in America.
全球No.1吉列極光刀100% 順貼肌膚親膚防剃選 Gillette Labs。
喂，係你啦，有難題講嚟聽下，即刻幫你。
Happy birthday！ 影對相先，咁暗點影啊？
即刻幫你。搞掂。
幾靚喎！未夠，仲要睇落因為 rich。
又嚟？得，生日大晒啊嘛！Samsung Galaxy S26 Ultra， 聽到做到。
David Muir, ABC's World News Tonight, America's most watched newscast. Now streaming same day with all the breaking news of the day on Disney Plus. Most watched, most trusted. Now on Disney Plus every night.
Tonight, the breaking news: severe storms slamming the east, tornado concerns from Florida all the way up to Philadelphia. Watches stretching 1,000 miles from Florida to the northeast. Blizzard warnings elsewhere. Drivers facing whiteout conditions in multiple states. Cars off highways, winds gusting 60 miles per hour. Thousands of flights canceled. Ginger Z is here. The chaos at America's airports, these severe storms, and TSA staffing shortages worsening. Now, weeks into this partial government shutdown, nearly 60,000 TSA workers going without their paychecks. The major airlines tonight begging lawmakers to pay these workers. The war in Iran tonight, an Iranian drone hitting a hotel, flames shooting out the windows. And tonight, President Trump now blasting America's NATO allies, demanding that they now help secure the Strait of Hormuz. One ally saying it's not our war. James Longman live from the region tonight. Just in, a federal judge tonight blocking Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s major changes involving childhood vaccines. Tonight, the Academy of Pediatrics calling this a victory and what they say parents should do. In New York City, the deadly inferno, a massive fire, 4 people killed, including a child. The daring Coast Guard rescue on the ice breaking apart in the middle of the rescue. Dolly Parton's first public appearance and what she's now revealed about her health. And the Oscars, the best actor celebrating with his mother at the Oscars, and then with his Oscar in one hand, a burger in the other, where he went right after.
This is the story of the war that dares not speak its name.
a war that started over 40 years ago, but has never officially been declared. The war between Iran on the one side and the United States and Israel on the other is both ideological and strategic. A conflict that never fails to stir up passions, resentment, and hatred. And if it ever really did kick off in earnest, the entire Middle East would go up in flames, very possibly triggering a new global conflict. So to understand this potential return to barbaric violence, we must go back in time to unravel the tangled threads of tragedy and seek the elusive truths behind the dogmas and certainties, and tell this story.
爸爸，我真係好醒啊！我哋唔使凍啦，我可以令企鵝都識飛啊！冇